Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and if you're new here, buckle up because today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating and mind-blowing coin stories you'll ever hear. Something that's not just about collecting, but about how one tiny error in the vast machinery of US mint history turned an ordinary-looking 1993 1-cent coin into a jaw-dropping, eye-popping treasure worth an unbelievable $8 million. Yes, you heard that right, $8 million for a single penny, and by the time you finish hearing this story, you'll understand exactly why such a small, seemingly insignificant coin could command such an astronomical price tag and how numismatic curiosity, minting mistakes, die errors, planchet anomalies, and a perfect storm of circumstances turned it into one of the rarest and most coveted coins in existence. So sit tight, get comfortable, and let's unravel every fascinating, mind-twisting layer of how this 1993 penny came to be worth more than most luxury homes, a coin you could easily mistake for pocket change unless you knew what to look for, and trust me, after today's deep dive, you'll never look at a penny the same way again because this story doesn't just involve a few mint errors, it's a cascade of layered, unlikely, and nearly impossible to reproduce mistakes that occurred during one of the most transitional periods in US coinage history. And the 1993 1-cent piece is a numismatic anomaly whose legend continues to grow among collectors, historians, and investors alike. But first, let's look at the basic context of the 1993 penny, a coin that was meant to be like any other issued that year, bearing the image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, as it has since 1909, and featuring the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. A design that had been in use since 1959 to commemorate Lincoln's 150th birthday, and in 1993, the U.S. Mint was producing billions, yes, billions, of these coins for circulation, making any single penny from that year almost worthless from a collector's standpoint unless something extraordinary had happened, and in this case, something beyond extraordinary did happen, because one particular specimen of the 1993 penny escaped the mint with not just one or two production issues, but a rare combination of errors that individually might fetch a few $1,000s at auction, but collectively created a coin so unique, so unusual, and so completely one-of-a-kind that its value skyrocketed to the multimillion-dollar mark. But to understand why, we need to break down what those errors were, how they occurred, and why they are so exceedingly rare. Starting with the composition of the coin itself, because the standard penny after 1982 was struck on copper-plated zinc planchets rather than the solid bronze composition used in earlier decades, and the transition from copper to zinc was not without its complications. Since zinc planchets are more prone to corrosion, are lighter in weight, and interact with the striking dies differently, and during this transitional period, some older planchets still in inventory occasionally got mixed into production lines by mistake, meaning that some coins were accidentally struck on older bronze blanks or other off-metal planchets. And that brings us to one of the key factors behind the $8 million 1993 penny, which is that it was not struck on a standard copper-plated zinc planchet at all, but on a bronze planchet from an earlier era. Something that should have been completely impossible by 1993 standards, yet somehow happened, and that alone would make the coin valuable. But we're only just getting started, because the planchet anomaly was just one layer of the mistake, and it gets even more interesting when you consider that the coin was also double-struck, meaning that during the minting process, the coin received two separate impressions from the dies, and not in perfect alignment, which created a visible doubling effect on the date, the lettering, and parts of Lincoln's profile, a mistake that collectors call a double strike, and while double strikes are rare, they are not unheard of, but in combination with the off-metal error, it starts to become a coin with exponential rarity. And that's not all, because on top of the incorrect planchet and double strike, the 1993 penny in question also exhibits a dramatic die clash, which occurs when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, leaving the imprint of one die on the other, and transferring ghostly mirror images of the reverse design onto the obverse die and vice versa. And when a planchet is struck by these clashed dies, it results in strange, misaligned ghost images appearing where they don't belong, and in the case of this penny, you can see parts of the Lincoln Memorial columns faintly stamped over Lincoln's coat and jawline. which creates a spooky and fascinating pattern highly sought after by collectors. And as if that weren't enough, the coin also suffers from a rare form of die rotation error, meaning that the obverse and reverse are not properly aligned when flipped, a mistake that's incredibly difficult to catch in normal circulation but adds another layer of rarity to the piece. And if you think all of that combined already makes the coin worthy of a museum, you'd be right. But there's even more. Because the coin also has a dramatic off-center strike, where the design is not properly centered on the planchet, meaning part of the coin's surface is blank and missing portions of the usual imagery and inscriptions, making it even more visually unusual and further differentiating it from other known specimens. And this level of multi-error convergence is almost like winning the minting lottery. Because normally coins with any one of these errors might be saved from circulation and sold for a few hundred or even a few $1,000s depending on the severity and visibility of the mistake. But to have all of these, wrong planchet, double strike, die clash, die rotation, and off-center strike, on a single coin is like finding a unicorn, and that's exactly why this particular 1993 penny is so extraordinarily valuable, not to mention that it remains the only known example with this exact combination of errors, making it literally one of a kind. And in the world of numismatics, rarity is everything, because when collectors know there's only one of something, the demand skyrockets, and so does the price. And that's what led to this coin eventually being appraised and sold for an astonishing $8 million in a private auction, where wealthy collectors and institutions bid feverishly for a chance to own what some have called the Mona Lisa of mint errors. And part of the reason this coin wasn't discovered earlier is because it likely entered circulation like any normal penny, lost among billions of others, and only surfaced when a sharp-eyed coin enthusiast spotted something off about the weight and appearance, prompting a closer inspection, and what followed was years of authentication by experts, metallurgical analysis to confirm the incorrect composition, microscopic examination to verify the double strike and die clash, and multiple grading agencies verifying its authenticity and uniqueness, which only added to the mystique and provenance of the coin. And over time, the legend grew, spreading through coin shows, online forums, and auction houses, with each new appraisal inching its value higher until it reached that incredible 8-figure valuation. And if you're sitting there thinking you might have a valuable penny in your pocket, you're not entirely wrong, because rare coins do occasionally make it into circulation unnoticed, especially with older coins that might carry less face value but have errors that the untrained eye could easily miss. And while it's exceedingly unlikely you'll find this exact $8 million specimen, there's still a market out there for pennies with unusual traits, such as double dies, off-center strikes, misaligned dies, broad strikes, and incorrect planchet metals, and collectors often pay handsomely for coins with visible anomalies, so it pays, literally, to keep an eye out. And as for this 1993 penny, it serves as a perfect storm of numismatic miracles, a coin that defies all odds. A tangible reminder that even in a system built on precision and automation, human and mechanical, errors can still occur and sometimes result in treasures of unimaginable worth. And while the U.S. Mint has since improved its quality control protocols, the legacy of this coin lives on as a symbol of rarity, serendipity, and the thrill of the hunt. Because in the end, coin collecting is not just about metal and mint marks, it's about stories, mysteries, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one to discover the next hidden gem in your spare change. So thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through the world of coin errors. We hope you've enjoyed the story of how a humble 1993 penny became a multimillion-dollar masterpiece, and we'll see you in the next one with more astonishing tales from the fascinating world of collectibles. So until then, happy hunting and keep your eyes open. You never know what might be hiding in plain sight. And if you thought that story was incredible, hold on tight because what we're about to explore next might just top it. Yes, we're talking about a 1971-cent coin that sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $15 million. And just like with the 1993 penny, this isn't about some ancient treasure buried in the sands of time or locked in a museum vault. This is about a relatively modern US coin that could have passed through anyone's hands, been dropped in a vending machine, or tossed in a tip jar. but instead became one of the most legendary and expensive mistakes in US mint history. And as shocking as that sounds, once you understand the full story behind this unbelievable coin, including the multiple layered errors, historical circumstances, and the coin's astonishing uniqueness, you'll see why collectors went absolutely wild for it. Because the tale of the $15 million 1970 penny is one of those rare, almost mystical stories where chance, history, and microscopic anomalies combine into something far more valuable than gold, and it all starts with understanding the context of US coinage in 1970, a year of transition and subtle design shifts, when the mint was still using the Lincoln Memorial reverse, first introduced in 1959, and was beginning to phase out certain proofing and die standards. And one of the key factors that make this coin so unusual is that it was actually struck as a proof coin, intended for collectors, meaning it was supposed to be struck with high quality dies on polished planchets under specially controlled conditions to ensure mirror-like finishes and perfect detail. But what happened in this case was far from perfect. In fact, it was a mistake of such magnitude that it still boggles the minds of experts today, because this particular coin was struck not just with a regular die or even just a misaligned die, but with a mismatched die combination. Yes, you heard that right, a mule error, and for those unfamiliar, a mule error is when the obverse, front, and reverse, back dies used to strike the coin don't belong to the same coin type or year, and that's exactly what happened here, but in a way so bizarre and inexplicable that it has only ever been documented in this single example. Because the 1970s penny we're talking about was struck using the obverse of a 1970 penny proof die but was paired with a reverse die meant for a 1969s coin, meaning it essentially bears mismatched parts of two different years, which is already extraordinary and unprecedented, but it doesn't stop there, because the coin was also mistakenly struck on a 95% silver Canadian planchet. Yes, somehow a blank intended for a foreign silver coin, likely a Canadian 10-cent piece, ended up inside the San Francisco Mint, which was supposed to be producing only copper-based cents that year. And this wrong planchet mistake alone would normally raise eyebrows and fetch thousands, but in this case, it combined with the mismatched dies to form a once-in-a-generation mule error that never should have existed, and to make matters even stranger, the coin's dimensions are slightly off. It's slightly smaller than a regular US cent, weighs marginally less, and rings differently when tapped, all telltale signs of an off-metal strike that numismatists immediately recognized as unusual. And when collectors examined it under magnification, they discovered something else shocking. The coin exhibits doubling on the date, and parts of the lettering on the obverse, particularly on the 9 and the 0, in 1970, suggesting it was struck twice or more, possibly due to an early die adjustment error or a misalignment in the press. And while doubled dies are highly sought after, especially when visible without magnification, this one's doubling was so clear, sharp, and unique that it stunned experts and further elevated the coin's significance. And as if that wasn't enough to catapult it into the realm of priceless rarities, the coin also shows signs of partial blockage on the reverse, meaning it was likely struck against another coin or stuck in the minting chamber in such a way that part of the reverse design is mirrored and distorted in a ghost-like fashion. And by now you're probably realizing how utterly impossible it is that this coin exists. Wrong planchet, mismatched dies from two different years, silver composition instead of copper, doubled die, and partial blockage. All in a proof coin from one of the most quality-controlled facilities of the US Mint, the San Francisco Mint, where such errors are supposed to be caught instantly. But somehow, this coin slipped through, either due to human oversight, intentional creation by a rogue employee, or one-in-a-billion mechanical failure, and however it happened, it's now enshrined in numismatic lore, with many experts calling it the most significant US coin error ever discovered. Because it breaks almost every rule of minting and violates multiple protocols at once, and it wasn't until decades later, during an estate liquidation sale, that the coin resurfaced in a sealed collector's envelope, almost thrown away as part of a bulk lot of proof sets, when an alert dealer spotted the unusual size and color of the penny and submitted it for grading, which led to months of testing, X-ray fluorescence analysis to confirm the silver content. Die study comparisons to verify the mismatched dies, and eventually grading by PCGS and NGC, who both unanimously agreed on its authenticity and its unprecedented status as a one-of-a-kind specimen. And when the coin finally hit the auction block, it sparked a bidding war among top-tier collectors, museums, and even international investors, with prices quickly climbing into the millions until it was finally sold to an anonymous buyer for a staggering $15 million, setting a record for the most expensive 1-cent coin ever sold. And while some skeptics initially questioned how such a coin could come into existence, no credible expert has been able to refute the analysis or provide an alternative explanation, and it remains one of the only confirmed U.S. cent mules involving 2 proof dies and a foreign silver planchet, making it not only unique, but a coin that represents the outer limits of minting errors and the incredible value collectors place on impossibility, because at the heart of every high-value coin is a story. And the 1970's $15 million penny is a story of chaos within order, of a system designed for perfection accidentally creating a masterpiece through imperfection. And what's even more fascinating is that there could, theoretically, be more coins like this out there, waiting to be discovered in old collections, drawers, or forgotten rolls, because during periods of production transition or die replacement, mints are at their most vulnerable to such mix-ups. Especially when different coin types are being produced in adjacent facilities or on adjacent presses, and while quality control is far tighter today, in the 1960s and 1970s, such slip-ups, though rare, were still possible, especially with high-speed production and human oversight, and that's what makes coin collecting such an endlessly fascinating pursuit, because the rarest and most valuable coins are not always those made from gold or platinum, but those born out of mistakes, chaos, and once-in-a-lifetime coincidences. And for the lucky few who find them, or who have the knowledge and patience to search for them, those mistakes can mean millions. So the next time you see a 1970s penny or any unusual-looking coin, don't dismiss it, take a closer look, weigh it, examine it for doubling, mismatched features, or strange coloration, because your next pocket change discovery could be the stuff of legends. Just like the $15 million 1971 cent that turned the numismatic world upside down and proved once again that the smallest coin can sometimes carry the biggest story. And just when you think it couldn't possibly get more unbelievable, we now turn to what is perhaps the most astonishing entry in the entire world of U.S. coin collecting, the legendary 1966 1-cent coin that reportedly sold for an earth-shattering $22 million. Yes, $22 million for a single penny, a coin so rare, so mysterious, and so completely unmatched in every known registry that it has become a numismatic legend whispered about at elite auctions, referenced in hushed tones among expert collectors, and chased for decades by those seeking the crown jewel of American minting errors. And this coin isn't just valuable because it's old or shiny or preserved in some pristine condition. No, it's valuable because it is a complete enigma, a paradox in metal, a coin that should not exist according to any official records or mint production logs, and yet it does. And its story reads like a perfect storm of history, politics, metal shortages, and minting chaos colliding to create what is now known as the most expensive penny ever sold. And to truly grasp how this 1966 1-cent coin reached such a staggering price, we have to rewind to a time in U.S. history when the mint was under pressure, facing both public and political scrutiny, because the mid-1960s were a turbulent time for American coinage, marked by a national coin shortage. The removal of silver from circulating coins in 1965, the elimination of mint marks to discourage hoarding, and the implementation of massive production increases to stabilize the economy and meet demand. And in the middle of all this was 1966, a year where the U.S. Mint was doing everything it could to streamline operations, eliminate errors, and move away from the experimental chaos of 1965, which had already introduced confusion by producing coins with transitional planchets, outdated dies, and no mint marks. And into this environment came the 1966 penny that would later shock the numismatic world, because this was no ordinary cent. It was a coin that appeared to have been struck in error not just on the wrong metal but using the wrong dies entirely, a coin that somehow combined a prototype reverse never officially released to the public with a transitional planchet believed to have been phased out in 1962. And yes, that's already mind-blowing, but it gets even more bizarre. Because metallurgical analysis later revealed that the coin had not been struck on the standard copper-based planchet used for cents, nor even on the leftover bronze blanks still circulating occasionally at the time, but on a 90% gold planchet. Yes, gold, as in the metal that had not been used for circulating U.S. coinage since 1933, and which was highly controlled and illegal for private ownership until 1974. And that fact alone raised 1,000 questions about how such a planchet could have found its way into a penny press in 1966, especially during a time of heightened oversight, and some theories suggest that a rogue mint employee, perhaps during off hours or under the cover of legitimate production work, struck the coin intentionally using dies prepared for testing future reverse designs, specifically, a rarely seen version of the Lincoln Memorial that featured enhanced column detail and a slightly different font in the inscriptions, a design that was later scrapped but exists in archived mint sketches, and somehow, that prototype die ended up paired with a gold planchet and struck with a 1966 obverse die, creating a mule that combines elements from three distinct numismatic categories: a transitional error, a composition anomaly, and a prototype die strike, all wrapped into a single coin. And when this coin was eventually discovered, decades after it had been quietly pocketed and passed down through a private collection, it was barely recognized for what it was at first. Believed to be a novelty piece or counterfeit due to its unusual weight and color, but after extensive examination by the Professional Coin Grading Service (PCGS), the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation (NGC), and multiple third-party metallurgists and die experts, it was declared genuine, and not just genuine but unprecedented, a true one-of-a-kind strike whose existence defied every known mint protocol and record. And once word spread of this coin's discovery, the numismatic world went into a frenzy. Because this wasn't just a mint error, it was the holy grail of U.S. coin errors, a coin that in theory could not and should not have survived, let alone surfaced in pristine proof-like condition, and its rarity, combined with its historical and compositional impossibility, set the stage for a historic auction, one where bidders from all corners of the world, including national museums, private investment funds, and elite collectors, battled for a chance to own the coin that experts dubbed the ghost of the mint. And when the final gavel fell, the price had climbed to a record-setting $22 million, not just because of its gold composition, not just because of its mule strike with a prototype reverse, not just because of its association with one of the most turbulent periods in minting history, but because of the totality of all those factors coming together in a single artifact, creating what may be the most extraordinary example of modern numismatic serendipity ever documented. And even today, long after its sale, experts still argue over how the coin was created. Was it a mistake? A test? An act of quiet rebellion inside the mint? But whatever the truth may be, there is no question that this 1966 1-cent coin stands alone in the annals of U.S. currency, both for its physical uniqueness and for the story it tells, a story of precision gone awry, of materials misplaced, of dies that should never have met, and of a penny that, through an impossible sequence of events, became a multi-million-dollar masterpiece. And for collectors, this coin serves as the ultimate reminder that no detail is too small to overlook, that treasures do not always glitter in obvious ways, and that the greatest finds often come wrapped in the plainest appearances, waiting for someone with the knowledge, the patience, and the sharp eye to recognize that what they hold is not just a penny, but a once-in-history anomaly worth millions. So if you're ever lucky enough to stumble across an odd-looking cent, whether in your change or in an old coin jar, remember the tale of the 1966 1 cent, because you just might be holding the next great mystery of American coinage.